The wind howled across the empty plains of Montana, carrying flakes of snow that bit into the skin like sharp little knives. Inside a small broken-down cabin near the edge of a forgotten trail, Clara Bennett shivered beside the flickering fire. Her hands, rough and calloused from years of hard work, held a tin mug of weak tea. She lived alone now, her parents long gone, her brother lost to the mines, and her little farm barely surviving the harsh winter. The only sounds that kept her company were the creak of old wood and the occasional moan of the wind. That night, as the storm grew stronger, Clara heard a faint knock at the door. She froze. No one ever came this way, not in weather like this. The knock came again, louder this time, desperate. Clara stood, clutching her shawl around her shoulders, and opened the door just enough to see a man standing outside, his hat heavy with snow, holding a small girl wrapped tightly in a blanket. "Ma'am," he said, his voice hoarse and cold. "We were headed to Fort Mason, but our wagon broke down a few miles back. I don't mean to intrude, but my daughter's freezing." Clara's eyes went to the little girl's face, pale, trembling, eyes full of fear. "Come in," she said softly. Quickly, before you both freeze to death, the man hesitated, as if he didn't want to burden her, but the child whimpered, and he stepped inside. Clara shut the door against the roaring wind and helped him ease the girl near the fire. "Thank you," he said, removing his wet gloves. "Name's Ethan Walker, and this here's my little girl, Sophie." "I'm Clara," she replied, adding another log to the fire. "You're lucky you found this place." "The storm's getting worse," he nodded. "I didn't see the cabin till the lightning flashed. Thought maybe it was abandoned." Clara smiled faintly. "Sometimes I think it should be." She gave Sophie a warm blanket and ladled out a bit of thin vegetable soup from the pot. The girl's eyes lit up as she tasted it, and Ethan watched her with such tenderness that Clara felt a pang in her heart. "Not many folks would open their doors to strangers," he said quietly. "Well," Clara answered, sitting down across from him, "not many folks have much to steal from me anyway." He chuckled, the sound deep and kind. "Still, it means a lot. We were sure we'd be sleeping in the snow tonight." The hours passed slowly. Clara learned that Ethan was traveling west with his daughter, looking for a new start after his wife's passing. He didn't say much else, and she didn't pry. By midnight, Sophie had fallen asleep on a blanket by the fire. Ethan looked at her for a long time before whispering, "She's all I have left." Clara nodded, feeling something stir in her chest. "You're a good father," he smiled faintly. "I try." When morning came, the storm had quieted. The plains outside were blanketed in white. Clara gave them what little breakfast she could, some bread, a bit of dried fruit, and hot tea. "You've been more than kind," Ethan said as he buttoned his coat. "I don't have much with me now, but I'll find a way to repay you." "There's no need," she replied. "You and your daughter are safe, that's enough." He studied her face for a moment, the worn lines of hardship, the gentleness in her eyes, and smiled. "You remind me of my wife." She had the same heart. Clara blushed and looked away. "You'd better get going before the snow traps you again." Ethan lifted Sophie into his arms and gave Clara a soft nod. "Thank you, Miss Bennett. Maybe we'll meet again." And then he was gone. Days passed. The storm cleared, and the lonely silence returned. Clara went back to her chores, milking the single cow that barely gave enough for herself and the chickens. But she couldn't stop thinking about the man and his daughter. Something about them, his kind eyes, his steady hands, the way he spoke to his child, lingered in her mind. A week later, as she was chopping firewood, she heard the distant sound of hooves. She frowned. Hardly anyone ever rode this way twice. Then she saw him, Ethan Walker, dressed clean and sharp, riding a beautiful black stallion. Behind him came a wagon, polished, covered, and drawn by two strong horses. Clara dropped her axe, staring in disbelief. He dismounted with an easy grace and tipped his hat. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Walker," she said, startled. What are you doing back here?" He smiled. "I told you I'd repay your kindness." Before she could speak, Sophie jumped from the wagon and ran to her. "Miss Clara!" she cried, hugging her legs. "Papa said we were coming back to see you." Clara knelt and hugged the girl tightly. "You look much better, sweetheart." Ethan's gaze softened. "That's thanks to you. If you hadn't opened that door, I don't know what would have happened to her." He stepped closer, holding out a small envelope. "I run a few ranches down south. I'd like to help fix this place up. You deserve more than broken boards and cold nights. Clara blinked, her hands trembling as she took the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a banknote for more money than she'd ever seen in her life. I can't accept this, she whispered. Ethan's voice was firm but kind. It's not charity. It's gratitude. You saved my daughter. Her eyes filled with tears. But you never told me that I'm a ranch owner? He smiled gently. Didn't seem important that night. Sometimes it's good to be just a man and a father, not a millionaire cowboy everyone wants something from. Clara laughed softly, wiping her eyes. A millionaire cowboy. I would never have guessed. Well, I'd trade all the money I have for the kindness you showed us. He looked around her little farm. The fence half broken, the barn leaning, the field overgrown. You work hard here, don't you? She nodded. It's all I've ever known. He stepped closer, his voice low. Then let me help. Not with money, with work. I've got men who can rebuild this place in a week. You deserve a chance to live, not just survive. Clara hesitated. Why would you do that for me? Ethan smiled. Because sometimes one night of kindness can change a lifetime. Within days, Ethan returned with wagons full of supplies and workers. They mended her roof, fixed the barn, even planted seeds in her barren field. Sophie ran around laughing, her joy filling the air with music Clara hadn't heard in years. Clara helped cook for the men, her cheeks glowing from the fire and laughter. She caught Ethan watching her sometimes, his eyes soft and thoughtful. When the work was done, her home no longer looked poor or broken. It stood tall and warm like a promise. That evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and gold, Ethan found Clara standing by the fence, watching the horses graze. You've given this place life again, she said quietly. He smiled. You gave me life when you opened your door. They stood in silence for a moment. Then he said, Sophie and we've been talking. We'd like to stay for a while. Maybe help you run this place. Clara turned to him, heart pounding. Stay? He nodded. Sophie says she wants to learn how to bake your bread. And I've grown fond of the peace here. Of you. Her breath caught. Ethan? He took her hands gently. You gave me hope, Clara. I'd like to give you the same, if you'll let me. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, You already have. Spring came early that year. The fields bloomed again, laughter filled the house, and the little farm became home not just to one lonely woman, but to a family. Clara often thought back to that cold night, the knock on her door, the choice to let in a stranger. She had no way of knowing that one act of kindness would change everything, that the man she helped would turn out to be a millionaire cowboy who saw her worth beyond all riches. And every evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Ethan would wrap an arm around her shoulders and whisper, I came here a lost man, but you made me rich in ways money never could. And Clara would smile, knowing that sometimes the smallest kindness could lead to the greatest love story of all.